Leonidas is remembered as the king who stood with 300 Spartans against an empire. But behind the legend of Thermopylae lies a deeper story about power, fear, sacrifice, and the psychology of resistance. When people hear 300 Spartans, they imagine a perfect last stand, a narrow pass, an ocean of enemies, a king who refuses to kneel. Yet history is rarely as simple as myth. To understand Leonidas, we must understand Sparta. Sparta was unlike any other Greek city-state. While Athens celebrated debate, philosophy, and art, Sparta built itself around discipline and war. From childhood, Spartan boys entered the agoge, a state-controlled training system designed to produce soldiers, not citizens. Pain was normalized, emotion was controlled. Weakness was unacceptable. Spartan society revolved around military readiness. Even their political system reflected balance through tension. Sparta had two kings at once, a council of elders, and elected officials. It was rigid, conservative, and obsessed with stability. Leonidas was not born first in line for the throne. He was the third son of King Xerxes. His older brothers were expected to rule. That meant Leonidas went through the full Spartan training system without the privileges of an heir. This mattered. Unlike some kings raised in comfort, Leonidas was shaped entirely by the agoge. He endured the same hardships as other boys. He learned hunger, endurance, silence, and obedience. When his half-brother Cleomenes died without a male heir, Leonidas unexpectedly became king around 490 BCE at that time. Persia was expanding westward under King Xerxes. The Persian Empire was not a small threat. It stretched across Asia Minor, Egypt, and deep into the Middle East. It was one of the most powerful political machines the world had ever seen. Its armies were vast, diverse, and logistically sophisticated. 10 years before Thermopylae, Persia had already attempted to invade Greece. That first invasion ended with a Greek victory at Marathon, led largely by but Persia did not forget. Xerxes prepared for years. He built bridges across the Hellespont. He gathered troops from across his empire. The invasion was not just a military campaign. It was a statement of imperial dominance. Greek city-states were divided. Some wanted to resist. Others were willing to submit. Unity among the Greeks was fragile. Sparta, however, understood the stakes. If Persia conquered mainland Greece, Spartan independence would vanish. When news came that Xerxes was advancing, Greece needed leadership. Sparta was recognized as the dominant land military power. Leonidas stepped forward, but Ibn Arimith simplifies your reality. Sparta could not send its full army immediately because of religious festivals and internal obligations. The timing of the invasion overlapped with the Olympic Games and the Carnea festival. Spartan law limited immediate mobilization. Leonidas did not march with only 300 because that was all Sparta had. He marched with 300 elite bodyguards as the spearhead of a larger Greek coalition force, numbering several thousand. Thermopylae was chosen strategically. It was a narrow coastal pass. At that time, the mountains pressed close to the sea. The narrow terrain neutralized Persia's numerical advantage. The idea was simple: force the massive Persian army into a bottleneck. When Xerxes arrived, he reportedly waited several days, expecting the Greeks to retreat. Instead, the Spartans stood calmly, combing their hair before battle. A ritual sign that they were preparing for death. For 2 days, the Greeks held the pass. Spartan discipline proved devastating in close combat. The Persian immortals, elite troops, failed to break the line. But war is rarely decided by courage alone. A local Greek named Ephialtes betrayed the defenders by revealing a mountain path that allowed Persian forces to outflank them. Leonidas faced a decision. He could retreat with the rest of the Greek army, or he could stay and delay the Persians, buying time for Greece to prepare. He chose to stay. He dismissed most of the allied forces and remained with his 300 Spartans, along with several hundred Thespians and Thebans. This final stand was not blind suicide. It was calculated resistance. By holding the pass as long as possible, Leonidas forced Xerxes to expend time and morale. He demonstrated that Persia was not invincible. He turned a military defeat into psychological warfare. On the third day, surrounded and outnumbered, The remaining Greeks fought until overwhelmed. Leonidas was killed. His body was reportedly mutilated by Xerxes in anger. But something unexpected happened. Instead of crushing Greek morale, Thermopylae ignited it. The sacrifice became a symbol. It unified divided cities. It reframed the invasion as a struggle for freedom rather than a hopeless defense. Soon after, the Greek navy achieved a decisive victory at Salamis. Later, Greek forces defeated the Persians at Plataea. Persia withdrew. Thermopylae was technically a Persian victory. Strategically and psychologically, it strengthened Greek resistance. Leonidas became larger than life. But who was he beyond the legend? He was not reckless. He did not seek death for glory. He operated within Spartan law and Greek strategy. He understood morale. Spartan culture valued dying in battle over surrender. But Leonidas' choice was also political. If Sparta had retreated immediately, its authority among Greek states might have weakened. By sacrificing himself, Leonidas reinforced Spartan credibility as a leader in the Greek alliance. History remembers the 300, but historians estimate that up to 7,000 Greeks initially fought at Thermopylae. The focus on 300 simplifies the narrative. Why does the number endure? Because it creates clarity. It turns complexity into symbolism. The 300 represent discipline against chaos, order against overwhelming force. Over centuries, the story evolved. Ancient historians like Herodotus recorded the events, though even his account mixes fact and legend. Later generations amplified the drama. Modern films further stylized the event into mythic spectacle, yet beneath the dramatic imagery lies a universal lesson. Thermopylae shows how small forces can resist larger ones when terrain, morale, and unity align. It also shows the power of narrative in warfare. Leonidas' death did not stop Xerxes' army, but it transformed how Greeks saw themselves. Before Thermopylae, many city-states feared Persian might. After Thermopylae, they believed resistance was possible, and belief changes history. Sparta itself would later decline. Its rigid society struggled to adapt to new political realities. The very discipline that made it powerful limited its flexibility. But the story of Leonidas survived Sparta's fall. He became a symbol not only for Greeks, but for later civilizations seeking heroic resistance. From Roman writers to modern military academies, Thermopylae is studied as a case of strategic delay and morale shaping. Yet we should not romanticize war blindly. Leonidas was a product of a harsh society. Sparta relied on helots and slave populations to sustain its military system. Its internal structure was built on control and fear. The heroism at Thermopylae coexisted with systemic brutality at home. History rarely offers pure heroes. It offers humans shaped by their environments. Leonidas was disciplined, courageous, and loyal to his state. He was also a king, defending a rigid system. The power of his story lies not in perfection, but in choice. He chose to stand. He chose to transform inevitable defeat into lasting meaning. And perhaps that is why his name endures. Not because he won, but because he understood the value of sacrifice in shaping the future. The 300 Spartans did not stop the Persian Empire, but they altered the psychological battlefield. They proved that empire is not invincible, and sometimes resistance itself becomes the turning point. If you want more stories like this, like the video and subscribe to History Refuge.